Carl Jung, How Your Shadow Side Can Reveal the Purpose of Your Life. Jungian philosophy. Imagine just for a moment that everything you actively struggle with in your daily life, every persistent fear that holds you back, every gnawing self-doubt that undermines your confidence, isn't merely a frustrating obstacle you must somehow overcome or eliminate. What if instead it functions as a complex, often cryptic map, subtly yet powerfully leading you directly towards your true, authentic purpose in this world? Think deeply about this possibility. What if the ultimate key to profoundly understanding who you truly are at your core and discerning what you are genuinely meant to do with your precious life lies hidden precisely within the very parts of yourself that you have spent years, perhaps even decades, diligently trying to ignore, actively suppress, or vehemently deny? Today we embark on an exploration into one of the most potentially transformative concepts within the vast realms of psychology and philosophy: Carl Jung's profound theory of the shadow. And let me assure you, this is not merely about discussing abstract theories or engaging in intellectual exercises. This is about courageously uncovering profound truths that possess the inherent potential to fundamentally reshape your entire life, your perception of yourself, and your relationship with the world. By the end of this shared journey, you will hopefully not only possess a deeper understanding of your own personal shadow, but also begin to discover how it intrinsically holds the secret to unlocking your authentic purpose, realizing your untapped potential, and ultimately achieving genuine psychological freedom. And the final revelation we will uncover together towards the end is perhaps the most powerful and potentially life-changing insight of all. Carl Jung, a pioneering figure who fearlessly charted the often turbulent depths of the human psyche, believed that the shadow represents the largely unconscious part of ourselves that we consciously or unconsciously reject, disown, or deem unacceptable. It consists essentially of all the traits, desires, impulses, and aspects of our multifaceted personality that we, based on personal experiences, familial conditioning, or societal pressures, have come to consider negative, undesirable, unacceptable, or perhaps even shameful. Yet paradoxically, Jung argued this very same shadow, this repository of our disowned selves, simultaneously contains the fertile seeds of our greatest, often unrealized strengths, our hidden talents, our unique creative potentials, and often the very blueprint for living a truly fulfilling, authentic life. Think honestly about it. How often do we instinctively avoid certain uncomfortable thoughts or shy away from specific behaviors precisely because they make us feel uneasy, anxious, or challenge our carefully constructed self-image? How frequently do we find ourselves harshly judging others for exhibiting particular traits? Perhaps arrogance, perhaps laziness, perhaps intense anger, traits that, if we were brutally honest, we secretly, perhaps shamefully, recognize dwelling within the hidden corners of ourselves. If you have ever caught yourself reacting with disproportionate intensity, whether anger, irritation, or even excessive admiration, to someone else's actions, there exists a very good chance, Jung would suggest, that it's because they have inadvertently touched upon a sensitive part of your own unacknowledged shadow. Jung himself once powerfully wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The shadow, therefore, isn't merely about inherent darkness or negativity in the simplistic sense. It is fundamentally about untapped potential. It represents the vast reserves of psychic energy we unconsciously bury deep within ourselves, primarily because we are too afraid, or perhaps too culturally ashamed, to consciously face, acknowledge, and integrate these aspects into our whole personality. Take a moment now for deep, honest reflection on your own life. Are there specific parts of yourself that you actively, consciously try to keep hidden, not just from others, but perhaps even more significantly, from yourself? Perhaps it manifests as a paralyzing fear of failure that prevents you from pursuing your dreams. Maybe it's a deep-seated, simmering anger or resentment you constantly suppress, or possibly a persistent, gnawing envy towards others' success that you quickly deny or rationalize away. Maybe it's a powerful creative passion or a deeply held personal desire you have convinced yourself or allowed others to convince you is fundamentally impractical, unrealistic, or somehow wrong. What if, just consider the possibility, these often challenging, uncomfortable aspects of yourself weren't merely character flaws to be rigorously eradicated, but rather profound messages from your deeper psyche patiently waiting to be understood, integrated, and perhaps even harnessed for your growth. Carl Jung profoundly believed that by consciously, courageously confronting our shadow, acknowledging its existence and understanding its roots, we can begin the essential process of integrating it into our conscious awareness. This integration, this movement towards psychological wholeness, is precisely what he termed individuation. It represents the lifelong journey of becoming a fully realized, unique individual. Now, let's be clear. This process is fundamentally not easy. It inherently requires immense courage to face uncomfortable truths about oneself. It demands rigorous honesty, often challenging cherished self-perceptions, and it necessitates a profound willingness to consciously step into the unknown territory of your own inner landscape. But the potential rewards, Jung argued, are truly immeasurable. Greater self-knowledge, increased authenticity, enhanced creativity, deeper relationships, and ultimately a profound sense of purpose and inner peace. Jung described individuation not merely as a psychological theory, but as the fundamental journey of discovering who you truly are, not just the polished, socially acceptable persona you habitually show to the world, but the complete and authentic self that courageously includes and integrates both the perceived light and the often denied shadow aspects of your being. He passionately argued that our greatest psychological growth comes not from perpetually rejecting or denying our shadow, but rather from consciously embracing it, understanding its messages, and integrating its potent energy into a larger, more conscious whole. Consider this recurring motif. Nearly every hero archetype depicted in timeless mythology inevitably faces a critical moment of confrontation, not just with external adversaries, but crucially with their own inner darkness, their personal shadow. Think of the archetypal Greek hero Hercules, who had to battle not only external monsters like the Hydra, but also confront and ultimately master his own destructive rage and personal flaws. Or consider Luke Skywalker in the epic Star Wars saga, who had to directly confront the seductive darkness residing within himself, the legacy of his father before he could truly step into his power and become a fully realized Jedi Knight. These powerful, enduring stories serve as profound mirrors, reflecting our own inherent psychological journeys. The fundamental question echoing through these myths, and now directed squarely at you, is this: are you genuinely willing to take that crucial first step towards self-knowledge? Are you truly ready to turn your gaze inward and look honestly at the very parts of yourself you have perhaps spent a lifetime running from, and courageously ask the transformative question, what are you desperately trying to teach me? Jung's profound philosophy teaches us that our personal shadow isn't ultimately an enemy to be feared and vanquished, but rather a potentially invaluable guide. It subtly whispers to us through the symbolic language of our dreams. It often speaks more loudly through our seemingly irrational fears and anxieties, and it frequently manifests most clearly within the complex dynamics of our interpersonal relationships. Have you ever experienced a recurring dream with unsettling themes or characters, or felt an inexplicable, powerful pull towards a particular idea, activity, or even a specific type of person, perhaps one that consciously seems wrong or dangerous? These subtle yet persistent phenomena may very well be signs originating from your unconscious signals, from your shadow attempting to communicate something vital, something requiring conscious attention. The active process of consciously working with your shadow invariably begins with cultivating awareness. Start diligently paying attention to the specific emotions and reactions that feel disproportionately intense, exaggerated, or seemingly out of sync with the external situation. These moments of intense reactivity are often potent clues pointing directly towards the specific aspects of yourself, the particular complexes or wounds that you have unconsciously hidden away in the depths. Once you begin to consciously identify these recurring triggers and the underlying traits or feelings they represent, the crucial next step is cultivating radical acceptance. This absolutely doesn't mean blindly acting on every dark impulse or indulging every destructive desire that emerges from the shadow. Rather, it means consciously acknowledging these parts of yourself: the anger, the envy, the fear, the insecurity, without harsh judgment, and patiently seeking to understand their origins, their underlying needs, and their legitimate role within the complex ecosystem of your whole personality. Imagine just for a moment how profoundly liberating it would feel to no longer live in constant fear of your own perceived flaws or dark impulses, to instead begin consciously seeing them not as enemies to be suppressed, but as potential tools for growth, sources of untapped energy, messengers offering invaluable wisdom. Think of how much more authentic, confident, and integrated you could potentially become simply by courageously embracing your whole self, light and shadow intertwined. In the coming sections, we will delve even deeper into the practical application of these ideas, exploring how you can more effectively identify and integrate your personal shadow into your conscious awareness. We will uncover actionable steps for transforming what currently feels like psychological darkness into illuminating light, and we will further explore precisely how this profound process of integration can ultimately lead you towards discovering and embodying your unique life's purpose. And remember, the most profound, potentially life-altering insight is still yet to come. Stay with us, because by the end of this journey, you will possess a clear roadmap, not only for understanding your own intricate shadow, but for consciously using it as a powerful guide towards fulfilling your ultimate destiny. Let's continue this fascinating journey into the often mysterious depths of your inner world and begin to uncover the truly extraordinary potential that lies dormant within. Let's dive even deeper now into the often mysterious, sometimes unsettling world of the shadow, and unravel further how consciously understanding this hidden aspect of yourself can unlock not only your authentic purpose, but also cultivate a profound, enduring sense of inner peace. The shadow, remember, manifests itself in countless subtle and overt ways throughout our daily lives. It can appear insidiously in our repetitive, often self-sabotaging habits. It frequently shapes the complex dynamics of our interpersonal relationships, often leading to recurring conflicts or patterns. And perhaps most noticeably, it reveals itself powerfully in our immediate, often disproportionate emotional reactions to external events or people. Have you ever experienced a sudden, overwhelming emotional outburst? Perhaps intense anger, irrational fear, or profound sadness, and then later wondered in a calmer moment why you reacted so strongly. That precise moment where raw emotion seems to completely overtake reason, and conscious control is often your shadow dramatically revealing itself, demanding attention. But why does the shadow possess such seemingly immense power over our conscious lives? Jung believed this power stems fundamentally from its unconscious nature. The more vehemently we deny or suppress a particular aspect of ourselves, whether a perceived flaw, an uncomfortable desire, or an unexpressed potential, the more unconscious control that aspect paradoxically gains over our behavior and emotional state. In a very real sense, it's akin to desperately trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. The more force you exert trying to keep it submerged and hidden, the more violently and unpredictably it eventually resurfaces when you can no longer maintain the exhausting effort of suppression. Now consider this transformative possibility. If you could somehow learn to consciously bring that hidden, submerged part to the surface, acknowledge its presence, and patiently seek to understand its origins and underlying needs. How much more conscious control would you ultimately possess over your own life? How much fundamentally freer would you genuinely feel, liberated from the tyranny of unconscious compulsions and reactive patterns? One of the most compelling and practically observable examples of shadow work involves understanding the pervasive psychological mechanism of projection. Jung argued forcefully that when we unconsciously disown certain parts of ourselves, aspects we deem unacceptable or threatening to our conscious self-image, we often quite predictably begin seeing those very traits exaggeratedly in other people, amplifying our emotional reactions to them. For instance, if you secretly struggle with deep-seated feelings of inadequacy or low self-worth, you might find yourself constantly criticizing others who appear overly confident or boastful. Or perhaps you habitually dismiss or subtly sabotage those individuals who noticeably excel in precisely those areas where you feel most insecure. This common psychological dynamic is not merely a random personality quirk. It functions as a powerful psychological mirror. The external world, particularly the people who trigger strong reactions within us, often reflects back to us the very parts of ourselves that we have yet to consciously acknowledge, accept, and integrate. Jung explained this crucial dynamic with profound insight. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Take another moment now for honest self-reflection. Is there someone specific in your life right now who consistently triggers a strong, perhaps negative emotional response within you? Perhaps it's a challenging colleague, a difficult friend, or even a close family member. Instead of instinctively focusing solely on their perceived behavior, try consciously shifting your perspective. Ask yourself courageously, what does this intense reaction potentially reveal about me? What specific part of my own shadow might I be unconsciously projecting onto them? This exercise is fundamentally not about engaging in self-blame or letting others off the hook for potentially harmful behavior. It is entirely about fostering deeper self-discovery. Each instance where you feel strongly triggered by another person represents a potential opportunity, an invitation, really, to reclaim a disowned piece of yourself. Understand its function and begin the vital process of bringing it consciously into the light of awareness. Let's take this core concept even further now by exploring precisely how the shadow intimately relates to discovering and living our authentic purpose. Often counterintuitively, the very parts of ourselves we have most diligently suppressed or denied throughout our lives are intimately, inextricably tied to our unique gifts, our deepest passions, our most authentic potentials. For example, someone who has systematically suppressed their innate creativity out of a paralyzing fear of failure or judgment may discover through conscious shadow work that courageously embracing this previously suppressed side becomes the very key that unlocks their true life's work, their most meaningful contribution to the world. Jung firmly believed that genuine purpose isn't primarily something we passively find externally, like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. It is rather something we actively uncover internally through the arduous yet rewarding process of self-discovery and integration. It's fundamentally about consciously aligning our external life choices with our authentic self, the self that necessarily includes both the perceived light and the acknowledged shadow aspects of our being. In his own profound words, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how, practically speaking, do we consciously begin this often challenging yet profoundly rewarding process of alignment? It invariably starts with rigorous self-inquiry. Begin asking yourself probing questions that actively challenge your ingrained assumptions about who you believe yourself to be. What do I fear most about myself? About revealing certain aspects to others? What messages did I receive, perhaps implicitly or explicitly growing up suggesting certain parts of me were somehow unacceptable. What genuine passions or dreams have I consciously or unconsciously abandoned over the years, perhaps because they felt too impractical, too unconventional, or somehow unworthy? Commit to writing these reflections down, journal about them regularly, meditate on them. You might be genuinely surprised at the depth of insight, the hidden potentials, the buried truths that begin to emerge when you finally give your neglected shadow a conscious voice. Another incredibly powerful tool for engaging in shadow work is consistent journaling. Jung himself meticulously kept extensive personal journals throughout his life, using them as a primary means to explore the vast, often bewildering landscape of his own unconscious mind. He frequently encouraged his patients to write down their dreams, recognizing that dreams often serve as a direct, albeit symbolic, line of communication to the unconscious. Within your dreams, the shadow often appears not directly, but in rich symbolic form, perhaps as a menacing person pursuing you, a frightening animal, or even a recurring unsettling event. Pay close attention to recurring themes, symbols, or emotions that appear in your dream life. Consciously ask yourself, what potential message might my unconscious be desperately trying to convey through these symbolic narratives? Now let's consider the truly transformative power that arises from consciously integrating the shadow. Imagine, for a moment, a talented painter who stubbornly refuses to use dark colors in their artwork, relying solely on light hues and bright tones. Their paintings might possess a certain superficial beauty, perhaps, but they would inevitably lack depth, contrast, genuine realism. When we courageously learn to embrace our own shadow, acknowledging and integrating our darker aspects, we become psychologically akin to an artist who skillfully uses the full spectrum of colors, both light and dark, to create a rich, complex, truly authentic masterpiece of a life. Crucially, integration doesn't mean blindly acting on every dark impulse that arises, nor does it imply letting the shadow completely dominate your conscious life. Instead, it involves consciously understanding and accepting these often challenging aspects as an inherent, unavoidable part of your complex humanity. This profound act of self-acceptance naturally fosters deep compassion not only for your own struggles and imperfections, but also inevitably for others as well. You begin to recognize with growing empathy that everyone carries a shadow. Everyone grapples with inner darkness. And this shared experience of navigating the complexities of the human condition ultimately connects us on a profoundly deep, unifying level. Remember, the journey to embrace your shadow is definitively not a one-time event with a clear finish line. It represents a lifelong process, an ongoing commitment to self-awareness and psychological growth. It undeniably requires unwavering patience, considerable courage, and a steadfast commitment to ongoing self-exploration. But the potential rewards are truly immense. Greater clarity about your authentic purpose, a deeper, more abiding sense of inner peace, and the invaluable ability to live authentically free from the exhausting burden of pretense and self-rejection. And here lies another critical insight. Your journey towards discovering and living your purpose isn't just about you. In isolation, Jung believed passionately that our individual individuation process, our personal journey towards wholeness, inherently contributes to the evolution of the collective unconscious, that shared reservoir of human experience and potential. When you courageously confront your own shadow, heal your wounds, and align more fully with your true self, you don't just transform your own life. You subtly, yet powerfully inspire and potentially elevate those around you, contributing positively to the broader tapestry of human consciousness. In the next section, we will explore more practical steps you can take to begin actively integrating your shadow into the fabric of your daily life. We'll discuss how consciously embracing this often hidden side can lead directly to healthier relationships, unlock greater creativity, and ultimately help you craft a life that feels genuinely deeply aligned with who you truly are. And remember, the most profound, most potentially life-altering truth is yet to come. Stay with us as we prepare to uncover the ultimate revelation about your shadow and how it holds the definitive key to unlocking your destiny. Music shifts, becoming perhaps more practical yet still profound. As we journey further into the practical depths of Jungian philosophy, let's now focus intently on how to actively apply the profound insights of shadow work within the context of your everyday life. Understanding your shadow intellectually is undoubtedly a powerful and necessary start, but genuine lasting transformation arises only through conscious, consistent integration. This represents the vital bridge between mere awareness and tangible action, the point where you begin intentionally weaving those previously hidden, perhaps feared aspects of yourself back into the intricate fabric of your conscious being. One of the absolutely first steps in this often challenging yet ultimately rewarding integration process involves cultivating the practice of radical self-honesty. This means learning to look at yourself, your thoughts, feelings, motivations, behaviors, without the usual distorting filters of denial, rationalization, or self-serving excuses. It inherently requires immense courage to honestly admit to yourself, perhaps for the first time, yes, I sometimes feel intense jealousy, or yes, I recognize a tendency within me to judge others unfairly. But here lies the absolute key. This kind of radical self-honesty is not intended as an exercise in harsh self-judgment or self-criticism. It is fundamentally about cultivating clear, non-judgmental awareness. Think about it metaphorically, like meticulously cleaning a cluttered room. You simply cannot effectively organize the space, make productive use of it, or even find what you're looking for until you first possess the willingness to honestly acknowledge the existing mess, to see clearly what is actually there. In precisely the same way, you cannot successfully integrate your shadow until you first develop the capacity to courageously recognize its presence within you without immediate condemnation or denial. A highly practical way to begin cultivating this self-honesty is by diligently paying close attention to your recurring emotional triggers. The very next time you feel a particularly strong reaction welling up inside you, whether it manifests as sudden anger, paralyzing fear, overwhelming sadness, or even excessive, perhaps disproportionate admiration for someone else, consciously pause, take a deep breath, and courageously ask yourself the probing questions. Why am I reacting this intensely? What underlying need or fear is being activated within me right now? What does this specific situation potentially reveal about me, about my own unresolved issues or hidden aspects? Is there possibly a part of myself that I am unconsciously projecting onto this external person or event? For example, if you consistently find yourself intensely irritated by someone who seems overly confident or boastful, consciously consider whether this irritation might stem from a deeply buried part of yourself that feels fundamentally insecure or inadequate, or perhaps, conversely, their outward confidence serves as an uncomfortable reminder of a similar trait, your own suppressed desire to confidently step into the spotlight that you have long denied or judged within yourself. This rigorous process of self-inquiry can undoubtedly feel deeply uncomfortable at first. The natural, conditioned temptation is often to immediately retreat back into familiar patterns of external blame or internal defensiveness, but consciously remember the ultimate goal. It is not fundamentally to criticize or condemn yourself. It is simply to understand yourself more deeply, more honestly, more completely. Each emotional trigger, each moment of intense reactivity represents a potential doorway leading towards greater self-awareness and integration. Once you begin consciously identifying specific aspects of your personal shadow, the crucial next step involves engaging in conscious dialogue with these disowned parts. Jung often encouraged his patients, and indeed practiced himself, to actively engage with their shadow aspects, almost as if they were separate entities or sub-personalities within the psyche. This might initially sound unusual, perhaps even slightly strange, but it serves as a powerful psychological technique for externalizing and thereby better understanding these often elusive, hidden parts of ourselves. Imagine metaphorically sitting across from your personal shadow, perhaps visualizing it as a specific figure or energy, and patiently, compassionately asking it direct question: why do you feel this intense anger, fear, envy? What perceived threat are you desperately trying to protect me from? What fundamental need do you possess that hasn't been acknowledged or met? This internal dialogue can be effectively facilitated through various methods: consistent journaling, focused meditation, active visualization, or even engaging in certain forms of creative expression. The fundamental goal is to intentionally create a safe internal space where your previously neglected shadow feels genuinely seen, heard, and acknowledged, perhaps for the very first time. Remember, reiterate this to yourself often. Your shadow is not inherently your enemy. It is more accurately a vital part of you that has likely been exiled, misunderstood, perhaps even wounded, and which has been desperately trying, often in its own flawed, distorted ways, to protect or guide you based on past experiences or perceived threats. For many individuals who courageously undertake this process of shadow dialogue, it often leads to truly surprising revelations. You might suddenly discover that a paralyzing fear you have carried unconsciously for years actually stems directly from a specific, perhaps forgotten childhood experience. Or you might realize that a particular personality trait you have long suppressed and judged harshly within yourself is actually a latent strength, just waiting patiently to be consciously acknowledged, integrated, and unleashed in a constructive way. Now let's explore more deeply how this vital process of shadow integration directly impacts your interpersonal relationships. The shadow doesn't merely influence your internal world in isolation. It profoundly shapes how you interact with others, often dictating the unconscious patterns and dynamics that play out in your connections. Frequently, unresolved aspects of your personal shadow manifest externally as recurring conflict, persistent tension, or seemingly inexplicable difficulties within your relationships. Have you ever found yourself repeatedly trapped in a situation where you consistently clash with someone, perhaps a partner, a family member, a colleague, over the very same fundamental issue again and again? Or perhaps you have consciously noticed recurring patterns in your relationship history, such as consistently attracting the same type of partner, perhaps emotionally unavailable, overly critical, etc., or repeatedly facing similar challenges and conflicts regardless of the specific person involved. These recurring external patterns can often serve as powerful clues, pointing directly towards underlying unresolved shadow dynamics operating within your own psyche. Jung profoundly believed that our significant relationships function as powerful mirrors, constantly, often unconsciously reflecting our own unconscious material back to us. When you feel intensely triggered by someone else's behavior, it is often precisely because they somehow embody or activate a specific trait, behavior, or emotional wound that resonates deeply with aspects of your own unacknowledged shadow. By consciously becoming aware of this intricate dynamic of projection and reflection, you gain the incredible power to potentially transform relationship conflict into an opportunity for profound personal growth. Instead of instinctively blaming or resenting the other person for triggering your discomfort, you can learn to pause and courageously ask yourself the transformative questions. What is this specific situation potentially teaching me about myself? What hidden aspect of my own being is this person or interaction bringing to light? This fundamental shift in perspective not only significantly deepens your self-awareness, fostering greater internal integration, but also naturally cultivates profound compassion and understanding both for yourself and for the other person involved in the dynamic. Let's take this powerful idea even further. How can consciously embracing your shadow actively enhance your innate creativity and help you connect more deeply with your authentic life purpose. Jung strongly argued that the shadow is not just a dark container for our negative traits, repressed fears, and past wounds. It is also paradoxically often the rich, fertile source of our most untapped potential, our raw creative energy, our deepest passions. The considerable amount of psychic energy you currently expend unconsciously suppressing your shadow can, through conscious integration work, be effectively redirected into constructive creative pursuits that genuinely align with your soul. For example, a deeply suppressed anger towards injustice, once acknowledged and channeled consciously, might transform into a powerful driving force for advocacy or meaningful social change. A secretly held desire for attention or recognition, often judged as narcissistic, could potentially fuel authentic artistic expression or courageous public speaking. When you consciously begin to integrate your shadow, you effectively reclaim the vast amounts of psychic energy that were once perpetually spent hiding, denying, or projecting those aspects. This reclaimed energy then becomes available for you to channel into pursuits that are genuinely aligned with your authentic self, your deepest values, your unique contributions to the world. Think of some of the truly greatest artists, writers, leaders, and innovators throughout history. Their most profound, most impactful work often undeniably reflects a deep, courageous engagement with their own inner shadows, their personal demons, their complex humanity. Consider Frida Kahlo's powerful paintings filled with raw, unflinching emotion and brutal honesty about physical and psychological pain and complex identity. Or reflect on Martin Luther King Jr., who effectively channeled his righteous anger at systemic injustice into a transformative movement that profoundly changed the world. Jung himself viewed engagement with creativity, whether through visual art, writing, music, or even innovative problem-solving, as a vital pathway towards individuation, towards wholeness. He believed that by actively engaging in creative activities, we naturally access and dialogue with parts of our unconscious, including the rich, often challenging terrain of the shadow. Now consciously consider your own life. Are there specific passions you secretly harbor, creative projects you long to undertake, perhaps dreams you've held onto since childhood, that you have consistently set aside, dismissed, or procrastinated on, perhaps because they felt too risky, too unconventional, too vulnerable? What if these neglected aspirations were in fact the very expressions of your true self, patiently waiting, perhaps even desperately pleading to finally emerge into the light? As you consciously, patiently begin the process of integrating your shadow, acknowledging and accepting all parts of yourself, you will likely notice a profound shift. The very traits, feelings, and impulses that once seemed overwhelmingly shameful, frightening, or unacceptable gradually begin to transform into unexpected sources of strength, wisdom, and authentic power. You will increasingly find yourself living with greater authenticity, enhanced confidence, and a clearer, more embodied sense of purpose. In the next and final section, we will unveil the ultimate truth about your relationship with your shadow and explore how fully embracing this often hidden aspect of yourself can lead not just to profound personal transformation, but potentially contribute to the healing and evolution of the world around you. Stay with us as we uncover the final, most powerful insight that promises to tie everything together, illuminating the path towards realizing your highest potential and fulfilling your unique destiny. As we arrive now at the culmination of this deep exploratory journey into the heart of Jungian thought, let's pause for a moment to fully reflect on the profound significance of what we have collectively uncovered. The shadow, that often hidden, frequently feared, yet undeniably integral part of ourselves, isn't ultimately a burdensome curse we must perpetually bear or desperately try to eradicate. It is rather a profound gift, patiently waiting to be unwrapped, acknowledged, and integrated. It intrinsically holds the key to unlocking our deepest authenticity, unleashing our dormant creativity and ultimately discovering and embodying our true, unique life purpose. But what does it genuinely mean in practical lived experience to truly embrace your shadow? And how can this courageous act of conscious integration transform not only your own intricate inner world, but also fundamentally alter the very way you engage with life as a whole, impacting your relationships, your work, your contribution to the world? To answer these profound questions, we must first courageously confront a fundamental truth that Jung himself consistently emphasized. We simply cannot achieve genuine psychological wholeness by perpetually rejecting or denying significant parts of ourselves. Wholeness arises inherently from unity, from consciously, patiently bringing all aspects of our multifaceted being, the perceived light and the acknowledged dark, into a state of dynamic harmony and integration within our conscious awareness. Jung famously powerfully stated, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This single sentence encapsulates the very essence of shadow work. It is not about somehow magically denying or eliminating the darkness within, but rather about courageously understanding it, compassionately owning it, and skillfully learning how to use its potent energy to fuel your personal growth and conscious evolution. So how practically do you begin to make the darkness conscious? One profoundly effective way is through cultivating repeated acts of vulnerability. When you possess the courage to openly, honestly acknowledge your fears, your insecurities, your perceived flaws, first to yourself and then perhaps selectively, appropriately to trusted others, you effectively take away their unconscious power to secretly control you from the shadows. Vulnerability seen through this lens is not weakness. It is profound strength. It represents the unwavering willingness to definitively say, "This is fundamentally who I am, imperfections and all, and I am ultimately enough just as I am." Consider the intricate dynamics of the relationships in your life. How often do we unconsciously put on elaborate masks, meticulously showing only those carefully selected parts of ourselves we mistakenly believe others will find acceptable or desirable? This deeply ingrained habit, while perhaps understandable as a defense mechanism, inevitably creates a subtle yet significant barrier between ourselves and the possibility of experiencing true, authentic connection. By consciously choosing to embrace your shadow, acknowledging your complexities and imperfections, you implicitly give yourself permission to show up more fully, more authentically, thereby allowing others the precious opportunity to see and potentially love you for who you genuinely, truly are, not just for the polished persona you present. This kind of radical authenticity is inherently magnetic. It naturally draws people in, fosters genuine trust, and cultivates significantly deeper, more meaningful relationships built on mutual acceptance rather than performance. And crucially, this transformative impact extends far beyond just your personal connections. It fundamentally influences the positive impact you can potentially have on the world. When you successfully integrate your shadow, when you cease being perpetually at war with yourself, internally, that newfound inner peace naturally radiates outward. It subtly yet powerfully influences how you approach external challenges, perceive opportunities, and ultimately engage with your unique life purpose. You transition from operating as a fragmented, often conflicted individual to becoming a person who increasingly operates from a place of centered wholeness, integrity, and authentic power. Let's revisit the concept of purpose through this integrating lens. Many people spend vast portions of their lives frantically searching externally for a sense of meaning or direction, believing purpose is something out there, waiting passively to be discovered. But Jung's profound wisdom teaches us that authentic purpose primarily arises from within. It is the natural, organic outcome of consciously aligning your external life choices with your true self. the self that necessarily courageously embraces the shadow as an integral part. Think about it deeply. Your unique purpose isn't just what you do in the world. It is fundamentally who you are as you do it. It represents the unique, inimitable combination of your inherent strengths, your genuine passions, and even your past struggles and hard-won wisdom, all coalescing to shape how you uniquely contribute to the world around you. The shadow, therefore, is not merely an inconvenient roadblock to your purpose. It is often an integral part of the equation, a vital guide pointing towards your most authentic path. For example, someone who has courageously grappled with deep feelings of unworthiness might discover their profound purpose lies precisely in compassionately helping others recognize their own intrinsic value. Someone who has consciously faced and integrated their own intense anger or righteous frustration at injustice might powerfully channel that potent energy into creating effective systems of justice or becoming a passionate advocate for meaningful change. Your deepest wounds, when consciously tended to and integrated, can paradoxically become the source of your greatest wisdom and strength. Now let's finally address the most profound insight of all, the ultimate revelation hinted at throughout this journey. Jung firmly believed that the arduous yet vital process of integrating the shadow doesn't just transform the individual in isolation. It possesses the latent potential to ripple outward, contributing subtly yet significantly to the transformation of humanity itself. Why? Because when you consciously, courageously confront your own inner darkness, your own capacity for negativity, selfishness, or cruelty, you naturally become more compassionate, more understanding, more profoundly empathetic towards the struggles and imperfections of others. You begin to recognize that the very struggles you have faced internally, the fears, the insecurities, the temptations, are not unique to you, but rather represent inherent aspects of the shared, complex human experience. Imagine just for a moment a world where significantly more people consciously chose to embrace their own shadows rather than unconsciously projecting their fears, insecurities, and judgments onto others. Imagine if instead of externalizing blame, individuals took responsibility for owning, healing, and growing from their own inner darkness. Conflicts, both interpersonal and societal, would likely dramatically diminish. Mutual understanding and empathy would inevitably deepen, and humanity as a collective might finally begin to move closer towards a state of collective enlightenment, greater consciousness, and more compassionate coexistence. This represents the true, profound power of shadow work. It is ultimately not just about superficial self-improvement or achieving personal happiness. It is fundamentally about contributing to a more conscious, connected, and compassionate world, one integrated individual at a time. As we conclude this deep exploration together, I leave you now with a final personal challenge. Consciously look within, not just glancing superficially at the parts of yourself. You are already proud of the aspects that garner external approval, but also, perhaps more importantly, courageously turn your attention towards the parts you have habitually hidden away, neglected, judged, or feared. Ask yourself honestly, persistently, what is my shadow desperately trying to teach me? How can I consciously begin to use its inherent lessons to live more authentically, more fully? What specific concrete steps can I take starting today to begin this vital journey of integration? Remember always that this is definitively not a one-time process with a neat finish line. It represents a lifelong journey of self-discovery, growth, and conscious evolution. But each single step you courageously take towards acknowledging, understanding, and integrating your shadow inevitably brings you closer to becoming the person you were always meant to be. A person of profound depth, unwavering purpose, and authentic wholeness. As we close, I warmly invite you to share your thoughts, your personal reflections, perhaps even your lingering questions. In the comments below, what specifically has this exploration of the shadow revealed to you? What particular insight resonates most deeply within your own experience? Your authentic insights, your vulnerability in sharing might very well inspire someone else reading this to take their own crucial first step on this transformative journey. This is not truly the end. It is merely the beginning of a new chapter, one where you consciously choose to embrace all of who you are, light and shadow intertwined, and step boldly, authentically, into the unique, meaningful life you were always destined to live. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey. May you find abundant courage, wisdom, and peace as you continue bravely to explore the intricate depths of your own magnificent being.